June 22nd, 2022. Our first order of business will be approval of the agenda. If there's no changes to the agenda, we can move on. All right, seeing and hearing none. Next thing is approval of the minutes from the June 8th, 2022 meeting. Are there any changes or additions? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved, Chair.
Moved by Councilmember Sterner, seconded by Councilmember Wolf. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion is adopted. Next, we are on to public invitation. At this point in the meeting, members of the public who wish to address the council on matters not on the agenda may do so. We have one person who is pre-registered to speak. You'll have about approximately 3 minutes to offer your comments. I believe with Mr. Marcuse here to join us. Someone.
That's what happens when you bring in a chair. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
Members of the committee, acting chair, my name is Mark Hughes, and this is just a follow-up to 2 weeks ago. We had something put in the packets from me, and I just 30 seconds ago got in touch with Charlie Carlson, who's back here, who promised me we would get together on the issue, but my issue is pretty self-explanatory, and it hasn't changed in the last 2 weeks. And I really was waiting for some interaction at some point, not certainly right now, but at some point with the Met Council on this issue. Because I could be one of many who have one or the same issue. And I'm concerned that nobody is getting back to me. And I welcome some interaction and comment from the Met Council at some point. Now, we have till the end of November before things really change, and it's self-explanatory is that I'm terminally ill and cannot move at this point. And so I need to extend some service hours. I'm asking you to help me with that. I'm going to continue to work as long as I can, and I'm not going to retire tomorrow, but I'd like some interaction with somebody from the Met Council soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Welcome.
All right, on to our next order of business, which would be approval of the consent agenda. We have 16 items on consent. I'd entertain a motion to approve the items on consent.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Lee. All those in favor say, or is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. We are on to our regular reports of standing committees. Our first is community development. We have Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Community Development brings one non-consent business item before us tonight. That is item 2022-157. It is the Round 1 Livable Communities Act Pre-Development Grant recommendations. Madam Chair, council members, the pre-development grants are intended for projects that need to complete additional work to fully shape and detail the final development and typically include a range of activities, including but not limited to feasibility analysis, various project studies, infrastructure, system engineering, development, and planning needs, design work, and community engagement. 7 applications were received from the cities of Brooklyn Center, Minneapolis, and St. Paul. 4 applications submitted met the minimum scoring criteria and award limits to be eligible for funding. The projects awarded will support affordable housing, mixed-use development, and local small business and community organizations, and any remaining funds can be allocated to future programming. So, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council award 4 Livable Communities Act pre-development grants totaling $475,000 as shown in Table 1 on the staff report.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Lee. Is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're on to the Environment Committee, and we have Councilmember Wolf tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Business item 2022-168 requests the ratification of the provided emergency declaration for repairs to the Seneca Headworks Belt. In February 22, in the middle of the night, there was a big ball of grease, oil, and fats that clogged the pipe of one of our contributing communities to the Seneca plant, and it caused the sewage to back up into people's homes. So the Public Works people for that community blasted the glob of fat, oil, and grease and dislodged it, which then came down to our facility and clogged up the Headworks building, making it flood. And everything got cleaned up with that, but in May, on May 4th, the conveyor belt in the Headworks plant came loose from the track, and with multiple attempts to fix it and put it back on a track, they could not keep it going. So they acted swiftly to obtain estimates, lead times, and to remove the old belt. The manufacturer installed the new belt the week of May 16th, but during that interim 2-week period, staff had to manually clean off the screen 24/7, which is a really terrible job. But they did it, thankfully, and we're grateful for all of their hard work, but clearly this was an emergency situation that we needed to replace this belt. We did have a blanket contract with the supplier, but it didn't have sufficient capacity to cover the repair, which of course needed to take place immediately. Therefore, Madam Chair and members of the council, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to ratify the emergency declaration provided with the business item for the repairs to the Seneca plant headworks belt. And I would also add that this was a learning opportunity for some of our communities, that even if something happens in the middle of the night, you do need to call us and warn us that something is going to be coming down the pipe. And so that information was reinforced with our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wolf. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Sterner. Is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Next, we're on to the Management Committee, and we have Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bring to the council today business item 2022-162, which is the labor agreement with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 82, AFL-CIO. The Metropolitan Council has a labor agreement with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, which expired on April 30th, 2022. The union represents 5 full-time employees. The union and the council reached a tentative agreement on May 26, 2022, which was ratified by the membership on May 26, 2022. Highlights of the agreement include a 3-year contract effective May 1st of 2022 to April 30th of 2025. Also a $2.50 per hour increase in year 1 and a $2.30 per hour increase for years 2 and 3 in the total wages and benefits package, which per council policy follows the outside agreement negotiated between District Council 82 and representatives of the local construction industry. In 2022, the total package will be $66.69 per hour. The cost of the labor agreement was reviewed by finance and was negotiated within the economic parameters established by the council. This item was also reviewed and approved by the Management Committee on June 8th of this year, and it was moved by Councilmember Muse and second by Councilmember Barber, and the motion carried. Madam Chair, at this time I move approval to authorize the regional administrator to enter into a labor agreement with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 82, AFL-CIO, effective May 1st of 2022 through April 30th of 2025.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Wolf. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank you. Next, we're on to reports of the Transportation Committee. Because I'm sitting in for Chair Zelli, the Vice Chair is going to take the reins on this one, so I will turn it over to Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council members, today I present business item number 2022-134. It's regarding the approval of the final Metro E-Line Corridor Plan. The final E-Line Corridor Plan identifies the station locations for the E-Line Arterial Bus Rapid Transit Corridor planned to begin construction in 2024, primarily along 4th Street and University, Hennepin Avenue, 44th Street, and France Avenue. The station locations are the result of a planning process occurring through 2018 to 2021, including ongoing outreach and engagement, interagency coordination, and system analysis. A draft version of the plan was released for public comment in fall 2021, and an updated recommended plan was released in spring 2022. Over 900 individual comments were received on the draft and recommended plans. While the E-Line project has had a high level of public support, some station locations have been the focus of concerns raised by station neighbors, including at 1st Avenue and 2nd Street Northeast. Action on this item was deferred from the May 23rd committee meeting to the June 13th meeting so that staff could prepare additional information for committee members in response to testimony received at the May 23rd meeting opposing this proposed station location. Across the plan, proposed station locations balance the E-Line goals for improving accessibility with concerns received, as well as positive feedback received throughout the planning process. Approval of the final plan provides critical direction and focus to the detailed design and engineering phase, allowing the project to advance. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council approve the final E-Line corridor plan to establish the number and location of stations included in the project.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Lilligren. Is there any other discussion? Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes, again, I'm speaking to the station on 43rd and Upton. As I explained in the committee meeting, I literally, as a M.A. Johnny come lately to this discussion and the whole line. But I have had meetings with a number of the community members, business owners. I've also had discussion with our council member, Linnea Palisano, for the district. The business owners raised some question about the ability from disability access to a clinic as well as a dentistry center there. But after talking to our staff and looking at what they've provided in the sense of responding to that question, also responding, they've had a number of public hearings, they've done great work. I will support this, and I appreciate the fact that the staff took the time in between that last conversation and the conversation we have today. And a council member, again, reached out the other day as well, and so I'll be supporting it, and again, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Councilmember. Additional questions, comments, discussion? Councilmember Musa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, I understand this item, this item will advance transportation equity, but I also want to raise that some of my, in District 8 residents have concerns about this item, and they feel that we did not listen to them, enough. We did not address their concerns. I had a long and extensive conversation with them. I will, support this item with the understanding that we will fulfill as a Met Council our commitment to that, to my residents, and that we listen to them and we'll follow up with them and we'll work with Hennepin County to address some of their concerns. With that understanding, I am here to vote yes, but I will highlight that, some of the residents are really very concerned about this item.
Thank you. Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, Chair, I was at all of those committee meetings, and we did promise at the last committee meeting to engage the residents in the neighborhood in the design of like the bike route, as well as the station location.
Thank you. Additional discussion?
Can I one more thing?
Yeah,
I think
Councilmember
the other issue on that note is that the trust issue. So following up and timely, responsive communication with them will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? I just have one comment. I want to thank our staff. This is putting my Transportation Committee Chair hat on for a moment, but there was a lot of discussion at Transportation Committee, and we asked a lot of questions, and they did go back and do further analysis and brought us a lot of the answers and clarifications, and also really did explain the commitment to ongoing public engagement throughout the process. So just really thank you. I see some of you in the audience, so much appreciated for all of the help in answering our questions. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. All right, Councilmember Chambliss.
Madam Chair, council members, I present business item number 2022-158. It's for the Metro Blue Line Extension Route Modification Recommendation. In August 2020, staff were directed to seek a solution for the Blue Line extension that did not use freight rail property as previously planned. Over the past 2 years, the Blue Line Extension Project Office has been developing route modification options. This work has included confirming project goals, developing study areas to evaluate, releasing potential routes, and evaluating those alternatives. All this work has been done in conjunction with robust community engagement and collaboration with partners. On April 18, 2022, the Route Modification Report was released with the recommendation to extend the existing Blue Line from Target Field Station along West Broadway Avenue in Minneapolis to County Road 81 in Crystal and Robbinsdale, and along West Broadway Avenue in Brooklyn Park. The report evaluated each route against the project principles and project goals, documented the technical analysis that informed the route modification, and incorporated public input from engagement efforts over the past year. The route modification report included a 38-day public comment period. During the comment period, over 1,100 comments were received. Based on the input received, the route modification report addendum recommends that the Blue Line Project Office continues to study the routing between downtown Minneapolis and West Broadway Avenue in Minneapolis, and to seek solutions and recommendations for anti-displacement efforts during the environmental review period for the project. This action will allow staff to seek consensus from the Federal Transit Administration on the environmental documentation path to complete and to begin to advance design work specific to this route. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council take action to advance the proposed route modification for the Metro Blue Line Extension Light Rail Transit Project as outlined in the April 18, 2022 Route Modification Report, and to direct staff to proceed with design and additional environmental evaluation.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Lilligren. Is there any other discussion? Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair, and Councilmember Chambliss, thanks for presenting this. And this is a huge thing that we're doing here, and we had a significant project that was practically derailed by powers outside of our control. And I represent the kind of two segments of the project that see the most significant change in the layout. And I just first off really want to commend project staff for the work that they did in engaging the community. And this was moving as quickly as we could, but as Ms. Sam O'Connell was here today, says it moves at the speed of trust. And we have communities that don't necessarily trust us or our government or trust the process, or who feel that they have been very damaged through this conversation. And the outreach was robust, the conversations were deep and frequent, meeting wherever folks could meet, really, in driveways and things. And so to get to this point as quickly and efficiently as we have, I am amazed. And there's still not without controversy, and there will still be controversy as we move forward. And I'm confident that our staff and my colleagues, Councilmember Chambliss and Chair Zaley, who serve on the Corridor Management Committee as well, will be up to those challenges. But I also want to lift up the involvement of the communities that I represent. And these have not been easy conversations, all in all, and they have stayed with it, and they have been supportive, professional, and I think all in all, this is a very good outcome, and I'm happy to support it. But I just don't want it to pass without noting this was a lot of work on behalf of our staff and on behalf of the communities we represent.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Any additional discussion? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate everything that Councilmember Lilligren said, and they really did work hard on this process. My concern is that we have had such a fundamental change in transit ridership, and without being able to update ridership numbers, spending that kind of money to do the engineering seems to be a little premature. So I'm going to vote no on this, but it's no disrespect to the process.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any additional discussion? Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also like to comment that I really appreciate everyone's input from the staff and the council members. This has been a very long-term project. I can remember, I'll just say plus 40 years ago that we worked on the original phase of the Blue Line, and we're just now getting to the point of looking at the Blue Line extension. We may have current issues that are causing constraints and potentially some obstacles that we will run across over time. But this is a project that could go on and we could benefit from many years. So we want to look at the future benefits that our community and our region will be able to attain by supporting this project.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? I just have a final comment. I actually want to thank Councilmember Lilligren and Councilmember Chambliss. You have been integral to some of the public outreach and meeting with the communities, especially during a time it was challenging to meet. And I'm sure the staff would say the same. That was much appreciated, but I think we've had a good feedback process because of some of your activities. So thank you, and thank you for your comments tonight. Seeing no more discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
And the motion carries. Now we're on to joint reports of the Environment and Community Development Committee, and I'm turning it back to Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. There are two joint committee reports from CDC, Community Development Committee and Environment Committee. They're both comprehensive plans. The first is for a community connected to the regional wastewater system and was heard in Community Development and Environment Committees. The second is for a community with its own municipal wastewater system and was only heard in Community Development Committee, so it was mistakenly placed on the joint reports, but we will consider it here. For both communities, council staff found that the 2040 plans conform to regional systems plans, are consistent with council policies, and are compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. The first is business item 2021-140. It's to authorize the City of Vermillion 2040 Comprehensive Plan and approve their comprehensive sewer plan. Madam Chair, sorry, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt the attached advisory comments and review record and take the following actions from Community Development Committee. Authorize the City of Vermillion to place its 2040 Comprehensive Plan to effect. Also, the city needs to provide the council the date the watershed approves the final local water management plan and the date the city adopts its final local water management plan. We also requested that the city provide the council with a copy of the final adopted local water management plan that will be included in the final plan document that the city adopts. If it differs from the version of the plan submitted to the council on December 31st, 2018. And third, to advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecasts and water supply. From the Environment Committee, approve the City of Vermilion's Comprehensive Sewer Plan, advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for wastewater. Also, the plan indicates that the city's wastewater treatment facility has adequate capacity to accommodate the anticipated growth through 2040, but that it will be at capacity at that time. If additional growth beyond that reflected in the plan is proposed in the future, the city will need to evaluate future options and begin the process of developing a facility plan for potential capacity improvements. If a future facility plan is developed, the city shall submit a final copy to the Metropolitan Council as an amendment to this comprehensive sewer plan. Fourth, the final submittal of the plan should include correct appendix references to the NPDES permit, and also should provide, or should include the entire current NPDES permit. The updated permit, once issued, should be forwarded to the council.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Wolf. Is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, and the motion carries. Councilmember Lilligren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next is business item 2022-156. This is the City of Bethel 2040 Comprehensive Plan. And again, this was only heard in Community Development Committee. I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt the attached advisory comments and review record and take the following actions. First, authorize the City of Bethel to place its 2040 Comprehensive Plan into effect. Second, to require the city to provide the council the date the city adopted the final local water management plan and send a copy of the final local water management plan if it differs from the draft dated September 2019. And lastly, advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecasts, housing, and water supply.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Zarin. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, and the motion carries. Next, we're on to other business. Our first item under other business is business item 2022-145, which is to endorse the Metro Transit Safety and Security Action Plan areas of work and establish quarterly reporting requirements. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Chambliss.
Once again, Madam Chair, council members, I'm presenting business item number 2022-145 to endorse Metro Transit Safety and Security Action Plan areas of work and to establish a quarterly reporting requirement. In summary, we received an extensive overview of the Metro Transit Safety and Security Action Plan, which I and others participated in at our June 1st Committee of the Whole meeting. The Safety and Security Action Plan documents Metro Transit's approach to advancing the recommendations put forward by the police work group that met from August of last year through February of this year. The plan identifies nearly 40 actions that will be taken to improve public safety on transit. These actions are based on the deep community engagement work led by the Citizens League and Twin Cities Innovation Alliance, as well as significant employee engagement within Metro Transit. The action plan is organized around 3 areas of work: improving conditions on the system, second, training and supporting employees, and third, engaging customers and partners. Today, we are being asked to endorse these 3 broad areas of work that structure the plan, recognizing that the detailed action items will continue to evolve over time. Additionally, as part of today's action, we are establishing quarterly reports that Metro Transit will provide to the Metropolitan Council and to the public. Through the police group's work, we determined that as council members, we need more regular information from our police department and from Metro Transit regarding public safety. This includes asking Metro Transit to help identify ways that council members can address some of the region-wide systemic problems that are visible on our transit system. Since the Safety and Security Action Plan items will continue to evolve and change through the course of implementation, the quarterly reports will be how we learn about changes to the action plan since the prior report, implementation status of action items, and performance on measurable goals. Finally, I'll note that the action plan and quarterly reports will be available on the Metro Transit website. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that Metropolitan Council endorse the Metro Transit Safety and Security Action Plan Areas of Work to advance the Metro Transit Police Work Group's recommendations and establish a quarterly reporting requirement.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Lee. Before I open it up for discussion, I just want to say a couple of things. First, I want to recognize and thank Councilmember Chambliss for her leadership on transit safety as the chair of the police work group. The Safety and Security Action Plan is the culmination of the works group to respond to the feedback that we received through the Citizens League and the Twin Cities Innovation Alliance, many conversations, employee engagement, and ongoing customer feedback. The police work group really covered tremendous ground in a very short period of time to develop this vision and framework that really centers on the safety work on people and focuses on improving the experience for transit for all. As Councilmember Chambliss noted, the plan is a living document, and with the quarterly reports that we're getting, we'll be able to really respond and change things a little more quickly and efficiently than we likely otherwise would. So I think it's really quite visionary how we're doing this. I also want to thank Leslie Canderas, who is the staff who is supporting this. She did an outstanding job. It was a lot of information to pull together, so really, really want to thank you. So with that, I will open the floor to discussion. Councilmember
Yeah,
Lilligren.
thanks. I would just really echo what you said about the leadership of Councilmember Chambliss. This was a very efficient process of a very difficult conversation to have, and I think that we moved quickly and well. I'm really impressed with the way the relationship between sort of the policy body and staff worked here, and, you know, we did our work and then handed it off to staff, and they did their work, and very quickly and efficiently, and I think this is innovative, and we're in a ecosystem in a country where policing issues and safety issues are always top of the list, and we're, I feel like in the region, we're really doing something, and we're in this evolution. We have many of the large police departments in our region are looking for new leadership, and so this is a critical moment. I really feel like as a governing body, we're stepping in and doing what we need to do in response to the environment that we're living in and the changes that we've seen over the last few years, and also that safety on transit is key to its success, and we are not the only transit system in the country that's, you know, having these kinds of conversations and these discussions about safety and the critical need to provide a safe environment for the success of transit. So I'm excited that we're doing this, and I feel like we're stepping out, we're stepping in, we're leaning in, and I'm so supportive of this. So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Councilmember. Our next other business item is 2022-178. It's the 2050 Transportation Policy Plan Advisory Work Group. This business item is proposed to establish an advisory work group to guide the development of the 2050 TPP and to appoint council members within the group. The TPP is one of our 4 major pieces of work, one of the system plans that falls under the state statute and federal requirements. You've all been briefed on the development of the region's every 10-year Metropolitan Development Guide to create a set of 2050 plan, and the TPP now is kicking off right along with the other systems plans. In order to make sure we have a collaborative process that allows policymakers from a variety of backgrounds to engage more deeply in the process, in the TPP development process, Councilmember or Chair Zille had asked staff to form an advisory work group that includes council members, transportation advisory board members from across the region, regional transportation implementing agencies, and the Minnesota Council on Disabilities. This group will work with council staff and a technical working group of staff representing agencies from across the region on issues requiring policy advisement. This group is advisory only. They will not make any formal decisions, but discussions will happen there and pass information on to the Transportation Committee and ultimately to the council. Councilmember, or Chair Zelli is recommending that we appoint 3 council members to do this, or to this work group now that, until we have a new council member named for District 3, and can access a 4th member then without having a quorum of the Transportation Committee. So the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council approve Chair Zelli's recommendation to establish a 2050 Transportation Policy Plan Advisory Work Group to advise and guide council staff throughout the development of the 2050 TPP with their representation reflected in the business item, and appoint Metropolitan Council members Deb Barber, John Pacheco, and Francisco Gonzalez to serve on the work group. And can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Moved, and I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Gonzalez. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and that motion carries. And that concludes our business for the evening. We are on to our information items. The first information item is the 2050 Regional Development Guide, Value, Visions, and Goals. We have Michael Larson here to present.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon, Chair, Council members. Good to see you again. I'm Michael Larson, Planning Analyst in the Community Development Division. I'm here to, again, talk about the vision, values, and goal process for the 2050 Regional Development Guide. So today I'd like to review our process, discuss some engagement that we've had to date, our plans for future outreach and engagement, and some of the emerging themes that we've heard so far. So I just want to review a number of things that are supporting our consideration of values and vision for you. These include the vision and plans, the vision in plans expressed by communities throughout the region in their most recent comprehensive plans, research on important issues for the region, including those related to racial disparities, economic strengths and weaknesses of the region, and climate issues. Themes that emerge from conversations with you and with our advisory groups, a specific direction that our policy plans may require, ranging from orderly and efficient regional development to preservation of natural resources, to meeting housing needs, among other issues. And finally, outreach and engagement to stakeholders, including but certainly not limited to our advisory groups. Our approach to outreach and engagement efforts is being informed by the Council's public engagement plan. Just broadly, this includes outreach to 2 groups of stakeholders. We were referring to Tier 1 stakeholders are those groups, such as our advisory groups, that we regularly engage or who we've engaged in processes in the past, and those who we frequently collaborate with. Tier 2 stakeholders are a broader group of interest groups that we will identify, inform, and consult with to determine their level of interest around engaging around this and what their needs might be in terms of providing input for this process. And we will, as we do that, we may identify groups that wish to participate more specifically in the details of the policy and planning group that will follow this process. Subject matter expertise that we are bringing to this discussion include, but perhaps not limited to, economic forecasting for the region, land use and development trends, transportation needs and issues that are emerging, water resource, including water supply, wastewater and surface water management, regional parks, housing affordability and development throughout the region, equity and systems change, and scenario planning. So I just want to emphasize who are Tier 1 stakeholders. Again, these are the standing groups and advisories that we consult with on a regular basis. Yesterday, we had a very engaging session with the Technical Advisory Committee to the Metropolitan Area Water Supply and Advisory Committee. Next week, we will engage at the kickoff meeting of the Transportation Policy Plan Policymaker Advisory Group, which you just affirmed with the last business item. And we will be conducting an engagement with them, one similar to the one that we had with you at the committee of the whole. So so this slide shows really just about a few examples of the so-called Tier 2 stakeholders that we may engage. These are groups that may have a share an interest or share similar roles, values, or interests with the council. They may be more or less interested in certain aspects of the 2050 Regional Development Guide and the related policy plans. And staff from various groups around the council may have relationships with these groups, and so they may take the lead, as well as you, as council members or community members, may have particular relationships with these groups and stakeholders. We may wish to leverage those relationships in terms of outreach and engagement. You will see that we have identified people in the region in quotation marks. We are certainly cognizant of the different types of affinity and identity groups throughout the region. And part of this process, we will wish to acknowledge, respect, and support their participation in this process as they desire and as is needed. So I'd like to review what some of the themes that we see emerging from the conversations that we've had to date. With this very colorful slide here. So I've grouped related language that we're hearing. This first group relates to what I'm calling organizational values. Participants understand that there are limited resources in the region, and that it's important for us to have focus and establish priorities so that we can be effective in our work. We also hear a lot of words related to compassion, respect, and empathy for others, as well as a willingness to be open in our communication and our process. We hear about the importance of leadership, but also in the context of collaboration and cooperation with others. We also hear about risk-taking, being passionate about the work, or being bold, creative, or innovative in our work. And we also hear about making sure that our actions are transparent and that we are accountable to each other. So the second set of values here really relate more specifically to the region and its people. Not surprisingly, many want to address the issues of equity, racism, and other forms of discrimination and inequities that our region experiences. Fairness, respect, and justice are words that we hear quite frequently. Similarly, we hear words about the values of belonging, of being included and participating fully in the life of the region. We hear, of course, about the importance of climate change and the environment, including the familiar words that should be familiar to all of us regarding stewardship, resilience, and sustainability. We also hear about values related to the economic well-being of the region, including prosperity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And values that show up a lot, especially related to the transportation system, include choice, comfort, and convenience. I might also add safety to that as well. So this slide includes some of what I would see at this point, some of the emerging themes. This very beautiful multicolored cloud format. We kind of are using some graphics to not suggest sort of a hierarchy or that any of this language is proposed for action, but just to try to start to put some structure together so for you to react to. So again, more food for thought. One of the ways that I've described to various groups about the future regional vision is that what we could achieve if we had a quote, all hands on deck approach. So something that is not naively visionary and something that's not overly pragmatic, but something that we're really committed to one another to achieve these things. So of course, eliminating racial disparities or closing of those gaps or some related language is something that I would certainly expect to see in a future regional vision at the end of this process. And again, on a related note, becoming, an unabashedly welcoming region where people feel welcome, valued, and safe is something else that I would expect to see highlighted. Seeing or realizing our region's growing diversity as a strength, including as an economic driver, is a theme that I hear from you as well as others. From a development standpoint, we see development as a means to addressing housing and job needs throughout the region, or as a means to protect or restore the natural environment through the development process, and as a means of enhancing existing places throughout the region that are important to our communities. We also hear a lot about the accessibility and navigability of our region. particularly by those who do not have access to personal vehicles, who cannot afford them or choose not to have them. Finally, we hear about the importance of public investments in helping shape the region, including addressing its economic vitality, the sustainability of its growth, ameliorating inequities, and driving down greenhouse gas emissions. So some of the as we close, I want to talk a little bit about the next steps for outreach and engagement. As I mentioned, we will be finalizing our engagement plan and starting to conduct outreach to our Tier 2 audiences to bring them into the process. We want to, again, I've mentioned this before, bring data and research to support conversations that are emerging around certain themes, so that becomes more grounded in data, quantitative and qualitative analysis. We'll be developing a web presence so that we have a public-facing place where we will, create an opportunity for people to engage with us and to learn about what's going on in terms of the 2050 Development Guide. And you will probably remember us mentioning that we developed an idea for a youth cohort that we could bring throughout this entire process, and we're currently working on that, and you will hear more about that in a future meeting. And just to remind you, our idea was to develop a cohort of young people who may have families and be at the height of their careers in the year 2050, and that this would provide an opportunity, learning opportunity, engagement opportunity, and a deep participation by a demographically representative group of young people. So that's all I have for you today, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair, who just arrived. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, or hear your ideas or suggestions for future meetings with you and what we might share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On your list of Tier 2 stakeholder examples, you have local government with watershed districts listed underneath. I'm hoping that you're going to include elected township and city officials as well, so that we can get their perspective, since they are a major stakeholder of ours when it comes to the comp plan process.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Wolf, one of the things that we have started is a regional planning advisory group that includes a representative group of planning directors and community development directors throughout the region, representing various community designations. And of course, local planners and local government officials would be part of that as well. It was hard not to start to list all of the folks in that list, but that certainly would include them. Thank you.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of places are small enough that they don't have a planning director or all of those sorts of things, so we need to make sure that we get to those places too. They might not have a lot of people, but they have a lot of geography and a lot of future open space for us, and we need to get their perspectives.
Absolutely, point well taken, and thank you for the reminder.
Thank you. Additional, Councilmember Lee.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I really want to applaud the idea of having a youth cohort be involved in this process, because the long-range planning that we do is so important. 18 years ago, when I was in high school, then State Senator Steve Kelly represented Hopkins, and he was the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and he created a youth advisory board to advise the Senate Education Committee on the debates at that time about the new high school standards. And I was one of the high school students that was appointed to that body. And I'd like to think that, 18 years ago, my service on that body helped inspire me 18 years later to apply for the Met Council and to be sitting up here. And I think it's important to have a youth voice informing in our process. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, thank you. Now I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chair.
No, keep going.
No, you can handle the last information.
Thank you, Chair Barber, for chairing this meeting, and I apologize for the council that my obligation took longer, and you conducted the business so efficiently. So, but I am glad to be here in time to hear the update on Southwest Light Rail. I always appreciate hearing from Nick Thompson and Jim Alexander on even more detail than I might read in the paper or see in my neighborhood. So welcome, Nick and Jim.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we have a PowerPoint that's going to be pulled up here.
And Ashanti.
All right, thank you, Greg. All right, well, it's been a while since we've given you a full update on the project. I actually just gave FTA a tour. They're wrapping up. I kind of had to break off earlier to come over here, but a lot of things happening, and just put the invite out ahead of time that we're all open to bringing you out for tours if you'd like to do so. So just keep that in mind. We certainly like to entertain that. So we really just want to go do a project update, talk about construction of the various elements and public involvement. Shanti's going to talk about DBE workforce, and Nick is going to follow up with where we are, funding status and all that good stuff. So I'm Jim Alexander, project director. It's good to see you all in person. I'll give you a rundown of where we're at. I have a couple of slides that I will start off because I think, following the chair's lead, we really need to emphasize that this isn't just about, building a small little project. This is big. 75% of the counties within the state of Minnesota, someone is bringing home a paycheck from this project. So that's a big thing. Have some numbers here. These are probably a little dated, but just give you an idea of the magnitude. You've probably seen this slide before, but we're going to look to update this. But we're a strong presence out there with employment. And the other factor is development. Development is going very strong out there, over $2 billion worth of things either on the planning books or actually constructed. The top two pieces here, Elevate out at Eden Prairie and the Moline in Hopkins, are already occupied, and a couple of projects down below that are on the planning books right now. So just to remind you of the complexity of the project, we have a lot of things happening here, 44 significant structures. Tunnel, namely the Canadaware Tunnel, we'll talk about that a little bit, but we've got a lot of bridges, and if you've been out and about, you've seen a lot of things out of the ground. We're really taking shape out there. So Nick had combined with myself and Nick, we gave you an update in January talking about status of revising our schedule. We talked about being in revenue service in 2027. We're still holding that, but I want to let you know that we are still working toward the end game, determining what that final date is going to be, along with the cost. So that first circle is the revised construction schedule and cost. That's with London McCrossin, the civil construction contractor. We have completed that back in actually St. Patrick's Day. We signed an agreement with LMJV to move forward on that. You may recall that you all authorized an encumbrance up to $210 million to solve that part of the project. And we are currently involved in getting an assessment of what that value is going to be, and ultimately we'll look to try to reach agreement of what that number finally is going to be with the contractor, and this is going to take some time. But if we don't reach agreement, we have a mediator process that we will go through to get a third party to weigh in. And if that doesn't pull through, we will go through binding arbitration. So we're just starting the same process with our systems contractor, Aldrich Parsons joint venture, and that's what the second circle is about. They're the systems contractor, and we see that being less complicated, but still something that needs to be done, because essentially we have delayed them with the delay of the civil construction. You may recall that we're up to about 34 and a half months of delay for that civil construction. So the systems is obviously going to be impacted with that as well, but that will lead us up into that 2027 date. And then to follow on, our work is not done. We still need to revise our consulting contracts. We have a number of contracts that help us through this process. We don't do it alone. We have advanced design consultant led by AECOM, a construction management led by Kimley Horn, and a quality management service led by Braun. And there's a lot of firms behind this that we have just practically about every consulting entity in the region on this project. Ultimately, that'll get us to a final schedule and cost. So we'll keep you dialed in as we progress on that second bubble. But I think we showed this earlier. This is probably an older stat in terms of the 60%. We're well over 60% complete on the civil construction. moving far along. And we're actually looking to turn over some of the sites in the west part of the project over to that systems contractor, essentially a handoff for the systems to start taking over and put up the OCS and the catenary and communication systems. So that's getting underway. So I thought that just put together some slides to talk about stations. We have 16 stations, new stations on this project, and we have about 12 that are really in construction. So I thought I'd, kind of the theme today is just to walk through the stations of their status. And we'll start from the west out of Southwest Station. This is a kind of an interior shot a little bit up on the left, underneath a 450 stall ramp that joins the existing parking ramp that Southwest Transit operates. And the lower right is essentially the bus loop where Southwest Transit will navigate their buses. So essentially we cohabitate with Southwest Transit at this station. Moving to the east, there's Eden Prairie Town Center Station. You see well along. You'll see some kind of themes. There's some kind of graphics that you'll see some of these stations. The cities helped us with these graphics and the colors as we are in design process. Golden Triangle Station still in Eden Prairie there. See one of our lengthy bridges off in the distance off to the left that's going over Highway 212. City West Station, this is just on the northern edge of Eden Prairie. You can kind of see the tunnel that goes under 62 off to the left there. And that station's moving along pretty well. Opus Station, this would be on the other side, so this is the north side on north of Highway 62 in the Opus Park area in Minnetonka. And Shady Oak Station, this is where we essentially start getting closer onto the freight rail corridor, first as we get into Hopkins. And downtown Hopkins Station, this is probably our most complete station that we have out there. This is one of the segments that we'll be handing off to the systems contractor, as well as those western segments that I just pointed to. Not a station here, but I wanted to show this is probably the most significant bridge we have. It's a concrete box girder post tension structure, pretty impressive structure. If you had a chance to take a look at it, again, we'd love to take you out on a tour on it. About a 400-foot span over Excelsior Boulevard and the railroad that TC&W operates on. Moving into St. Louis Park, we have Wooddale Avenue Station starting to take shape there. And Beltline Boulevard Station there off in the distance is a trail bridge that the city of St. Louis Park, Three Rivers, and Hennepin County provided funding for. I wanted to pause on this a little bit, the Canadaware Tunnel. So as you can see, we have a lot progressed on the west end. On the east end, it's a little bit less, particularly at the tunnel. And we're on pause on the secant work. This is a drill rig to install the secant piles. Some of you have been out there to visit on this, but we essentially stopped work in January due to some issues with the local, with a close-by building. And we have recommenced that work, and we have a kind of an enhanced monitoring program in place that we are keeping an eye on things to make sure that we're not disrupting the existing buildings nearby. I wouldn't want to just take a moment to say, because there's been a lot of communication, discussion on this topic, particularly with some news agencies talking about reports and information related to this. And I can tell you that we are keeping very close contact with the Seeker residents. We actually had a meeting with them earlier this week with their engineer and our engineer to talk about what we're seeing with the monitoring. And I hear this rhetoric about a report being out there. We're not giving a report to anyone. Well, I can tell you there is no report. There is a PowerPoint that we presented to the Seeker residents, and it explains what our engineers' observations were back, the incident occurred back in January. We are trying to be very mindful of the residents because this is their home, their homes here. There are a lot of condominiums at this location, and so we don't necessarily want to broadcast widely about what's going on. We like to talk to the homeowners directly, and there seems to be a lot of interest in finding a report. Well, there's no report, so I just wanted to put that straight out. But we do have a PowerPoint presentation that we've shared. And we've also made our engineer, Socatech, readily available to the SEEK engineer as we work through this. It's kind of we have to treat this with some tenderness because these are folks' homes, and we want to be very careful about mindful as we move forward. But we have recommenced the secant work, And maybe I'll pause, seems like I might have a question there. Madam Chair, council member.
Do you have a question now?
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
do have a
John.
question. Why is there not a report?
Well, we didn't request one, Madam Chair, council member, we didn't request one. We wanted to keep it straightforward with a PowerPoint. There's certainly data behind that presentation that the engineer, essentially we hired engineer through our legal firm called Venable. And the company is called Socatec, who did the engineering. They are a forensic engineer known worldwide for the work they do. And we hired them to really assess the situation and to understand what had happened. And they culminated their findings in a PowerPoint presentation.
Any other questions at this point?
All right. So we'll move on to the Canadaware Tunnel itself. If you haven't been out there, you can actually have a good viewpoint, as this is standing on a new pedestrian bridge, temporary bridge that goes across over the tunnel. And if you look to the south on that pedestrian bridge, you see really a completed tunnel. So we have some segments done. You can see the Cedar Isles condominium building off in the distance on that image on the right. And this is a completed tunnel on that right image. On the left image, you can get a picture of all the activity that goes on to build this tunnel and the activity that has to go on. So
And
pretty
just to
extensive.
clarify, this picture on the right, that is the actual top of the tunnel. So underneath it is the full tunnel to handle
Yes,
two
Mr. Chair, that is
trains.
correct. So eventually, we will backfill this. We'll move the railroad back to where it originally was, about 4 feet toward the tunnel, and a trail will be planted on top of that, and we'll be complete with that effort. All right. So moving further to the east, the West 21st Street Station is moving along as well. And then the Bryn Mawr Station starting to get in place. And added to that, we have a pedestrian access that comes from the frontage road just off of 394 that'll lead down into the station. So this is over the freight rail tracks and the quarter protection wall you can see in the kind of the foreground there, with the station off to the left. And we're working on a number of bridges in the Glenwood Avenue area. There are 3 bridges here. This is drilled shafts for the west abutment of the bridge. Maybe I'll pause there for any questions, what I've shared so far.
Any questions so far?
Well, it just maybe stuck in my head, but I appreciate a good PowerPoint as well as anyone else, but there are times when more information is better. I mean, it seems it's just so simple to do a PowerPoint and say, well, you all understand. And so I would encourage you to take another look at what's necessary for not only the neighbors, but even council members to really understand more than a PowerPoint can project at this time.
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember, I think that's a very good idea. Where I think that might be a good opportunity is to, if people want to see things firsthand, we can certainly take folks out, because that's where you really kind of see it. The pictures only do so much, and in the time, but be glad to go do a deeper dive on certain elements if there's a desire to do that.
I think you were talking about the Sika building.
Right.
And that Socatec didn't actually publish a report because it wasn't asked, but did answer the questions that we were engaged to answer. And they have their own work notes, which I think the issue is those are proprietary of their own notes. So I think it's worth additional conversation, but I don't think it's quite as simple, as I understand it, that there is an actual report. Because
That is correct. All right, so we put this slide together to talk about trails. There's been a lot of questions about when we were going to open trails. So we put dates out there that correspond with our substantial completion dates we negotiated with the civil contractor. They are out there in time, and people aren't too happy about them. Frankly, I'm not too happy about them myself, but this is our reality. And we do know that we are working with our contractor to try to rein these dates in as much as we can. We'll open things up when it's safe to do so. As you see, there is one small segment down there on the lower left in the yellow that we hope to open up later this summer that essentially runs from that Excelsior Bridge over to 11th and Hopkins. But the rest of, as some of you have been out on the site, along these sites, there's a very confined area, not a lot of room to maneuver construction equipment and have an active trail in place. But we'll continue to update in our weekly news bulletins as we talk about construction activity. So systems contract, I just have a couple of images here. You may recall there was a change order last year to essentially have a storage facility in place to temporarily store the systems equipment. And we recommended doing that to really kind of cut through the supply chain issues we foresaw happening and they're currently going on. So we continued with production of the systems elements while we have this location to this facility to store these elements. And here, and you can see there's 4 traction power substations already installed in the storage. They are actually running. They have power to them. This is a secured site that we think it's a big advantage to the project to keep things moving on the systems element and not be subject to that supply-demand challenge that's out there. Just another image showing the cabling that's stored out there as well. And I wanted to touch on the Franklin O&M facility. Not a lot of people are talking about this so much, but this is a contract that we are just finishing up. We have a few punch list items to do. We essentially expanded the maintenance area for this facility. We also, up on top on the right, we added a rail control center, actually just moved their operations facility up to this area to give them more space to handle Southwest LRT and hopefully when Blue Line extension happens as well to accommodate that as well. And we have done this to handle the 27 vehicles that are part of the Siemens contract that we have on this project. And so part of this is expanding storage on the west side with 2 runner tracks that we have installed. And here's the rail control center image inside there. All right, just a couple of slides. Unless there are any questions, maybe I'll pause there. Any questions on construction?
Sure.
Oh, Rita, go ahead.
That's okay, I was a little
Councilmember
late,
Chambliss.
delay. I just want to say that I did go on a tour of the Southwest with several of my colleagues, and it's a very well-planned project. When you see the amount of development that has happened as a result of this project, and you spoke about, you know, the, what is it, $2.5 billion has been planned and permitted for community development. And you see, especially the Kenilworth Trail area, the way that they can keep that moving within such a limited space is absolutely amazing. And to see that the trails would be open in a matter of a few years is exciting. There's a lot of twists and turns, a lot of technical issues that were not anticipated. The fact that there were even scuba divers having to go down and check that everything was okay underground. I know this is a very challenging project, but I would encourage anyone who has not taken a tour through that area to take a tour. I went through the St. Louis Park area and saw the station that was up. There's a lot of work that's already been done. And it's important to acknowledge that, and I'm looking forward to seeing more progress.
All right, well, thank you for that, Councilmember. So just a little bit on public involvement. This is a big part of our mission, if you will. So 2022 engagement through June 1, you can see the numbers there. We've had a number of meetings. We're over, I think, well over 2,000 meetings on this project. We've been busy since I've been on 2011. But then the walking tours, we did those 5 in May, and we just announced last week for 5 in July, and we'll anticipate doing more. This is for the public, and I would say that they fill up pretty quickly. There's a lot of interest there. Hotline calls continue. Kind of died down from our original numbers, but we still get hotline calls and a lot of communication, frankly, with all our staff. And here's just an image. I think this is the MnDOT retirees we met with, but we do meet with groups on occasion as the interest is there to learn about the project. So with that, unless there are any other questions, I'll hand it over to Mr. Payne here.
Thanks, Jim. Chair, council members. Shanti Payne, Assistant Director of the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity, and I'm here to share the DBE progress and workforce projects that's occurred on the project. As you see from this slide, this is a snapshot of the DBE progress on all of the various projects related to the Green Line extension. And this data is good as of April 30th, 2022. And all of the projects are currently exceeding the established DBE goal. However, I do want to stress that it's going to take work, coordination, and communication to maintain these levels as we hope to. And it's not going to happen just by us sitting back and admiring where we are right now. This is a snapshot of the civil participation over the 3-year period. Again, as you see, we've kind of plateaued here at 20.5%, but it is above the 16% goal that was established for the project. The systems contract as well is exceeding the goal, and again, you can see that progress over that 2-year period. And as Jim mentioned, the Franklin O&M project is basically reaching completion. There's a few punch list items, but we don't expect that 19% goal to deviate much, if at all, from where it is right now. And this is a disaggregated look at the DBE participation. This is, again, inclusive of all of the contracts related to the project, and it's disaggregated by gender and ethnicity to see where those dollars are going on this project. And this is just a pie chart and disaggregated look at the DBE participation by state. Of course, we'd like to see Minnesota leading the way significantly, as we want this project to benefit the region. And just another point to note that the systems contract added a new DBE contractor, Asian male-owned contract, and that contractor is from Illinois, so the Illinois percentage did go up from the last time we presented. Before I move on to the workforce, are there any questions relative to DBE? All right, this is the civil workforce participation. Again, this is as of April 30th. And you see the blue is the achievement from the LMJV in terms of women and persons of color. The green is the established goal, which is established by the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. And then the gold is the project to date participation. And we are at 23.36% and 8.17% respectively for people of color and women participation on our workforce. And this is the women participation on the civil contract cumulative. If you could see by this pattern, that the percentage in participation drops over the winter months and then picks back up in the spring and summer during the heavy construction periods. And again, this is the workforce participation for people of color. It is below the 32% goal, and right now it's at 22.23%. I will note that this is on par or ahead of comparative projects in the region in terms of participation for people in color on capital projects of this sort. And again, this slide just shows a disaggregated look at the workforce hours and who's participating, broken down by gender and ethnicity. And again, the Franklin O&M workforce participation, there's not much going on this project. And again, we don't expect these numbers to change significantly while this project wraps up and heads towards completion. The systems contract, the hours themselves are really low because the systems contract, again, as Jim noted, they're waiting for turnover for the civil contract so that they can really get into their work and start working heavily on the project. And I'll just mention one thing in terms of the workforce. In April, as folks started gearing up and working again, 40% of the hours worked in April were for people of color, and that is something that we want to try to see more of as this project moves forward and continues on those types of levels. With that, is there any questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ashanti, for that presentation, and this data is so helpful. And so I'm just wondering, with your last comment and also with the areas where we're falling short of our participation goals, I'm like that 40% number, that's just great to hear. And so as we say, we want to try to meet that number or keep numbers up there, or even as we're trying to close the gaps on our participation goals. What are we doing to see that we can do that? Because I've had the experience in the past where the less work there is to do, the less opportunity you have to meet those goals. And so just if you could characterize, please, what we're doing to close that gap or to keep that 40% number up.
Thank you, Chair, Councilmember Lilligren. Great question. We are currently working with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, LMJV, and the major subs on the project to strategize in terms of how we can get those numbers up and continue to see this as the project moves forward. One of the things that the JV has undertaken is they have a weekly meeting with their subs that's mandatory for them to talk about their good faith efforts and what they're doing to increase the numbers on in their respective workforces.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. And just following up on what Councilmember Lilligren said about the not meeting the goal. I'm especially looking at the civil workforce participation, that we're like 10% below the goal. What are you finding are the causes of that? I mean, do we have the workforce? Are they employed somewhere else and not available for this project? Do you have any idea what's going on?
Chair, Councilmember Gonzalez, there's a number of factors. One of the things that we do know in terms of women in the construction field, we know that there's 8% women in the apprentice trades, and the goal is 20%. So the question is, where are we going to get, how are we going to close that gap? And it's an industry focus that we have to have in terms of how do we attract more women into this industry and into the trades and into the apprenticeships so that we can attack this issue. In terms of people of color, there are some unions that do very well in terms of their diversity. Specifically, the laborers union, we know that they have the highest in terms of representation of people of color in their union. And again, these are strategies and why we have a Disadvantaged Business and Workforce Advisory Committee to help us identify solutions and strategies that'll help us get there. But I do want to stress this is something that we have to look at from an industry and regional perspective in terms of our workforce and how we get there.
Thank you. Any other question? All right, Nick?
All right, Mr. Chair, council members, Nick Thompson, Metro Transit. Just going to close out tonight with just a brief update on project budget. If you recall, back to January, we were before you talking about requesting a settlement agreement with LMJV for $210 million, which you approved. At that time is when we talked about the total need for the project to get to completion. And we had calculated at that time, we needed additional between $450 and $550 million for the project. We have a series of strategies that we were employing to try to close that gap with our funding partners. Our funding partners here being FTA, federal government, and Hennepin County. We had some legislative strategies at that time that we were pursuing, and some other steps. You know, at this point, we stated then, and we can state again today, there isn't a lot we can do within the project itself to cut the scope of the project, to cut the cost. As Jim showed in the pictures, a lot of this project is constructed. We are not going to remove stations. We've bought all the LRVs. We've procured the equipment. The systems contractor has ordered all the equipment that's needed to operate this. And so there isn't options within the scope of the project, and we don't want to. The communities, we've committed to building this project. There are strategies that we could employ to reduce the need, and step one was to reach a settlement agreement, and we've done that, and we're pursuing that. That was very important to lock in what our costs are and our schedule. We've done other actions like a picture we showed of the storage facility to store the equipment. That is saving the project significant amount of money because we were locked into the prices. They could order that equipment, and as you've seen, how hard it is to get technology and the prices of those. We are not going to bear those inflationary costs because the council made that decision. And that was a great way to save some costs. But that funding gap still persists. The council took the first step on that. You approved assigning $50 million of federal 5307 funding to this project. That was an increase in funding to the project that we actually received last week. So that was very important to move this forward. But we need to solve this funding gap, at least a portion of it. The project needs funding if we're going to continue work in 2023. So we have not solved that. No action occurred at the legislative level, at the state level, that helped close that gap. And so we need to work with our funding partners soon to close at least a portion of that gap. We don't have to have the final solution this year to get to the end, but we want to, the value of this project continues. The development is occurring. The communities are building with anticipation of opening this line. The value for generations that this project will give to the region for the environmental value, the social and economic value is still there. It's a couple years later than we anticipated, but we need to complete this project. It's not, there's a cost if we don't complete the project too. So the value is there. We need to find a funding solution. We do not have that yet, but we have some urgency now to find that in the next few months so that we can continue working to 2023. So that's a general update. It's not the solution we have, but we definitely wanted to comment on that tonight. So, Mr. Chair, I think that completes our presentation. We're happy to take more questions too.
All right. Any questions for the team? Yeah.
Sure.
Councilmember Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for the update and giving us this news, which is, not so pleasant. I think what we, as a council, would need are regular updates on how we're doing regarding the gap. And we all need to work together, given, like what you said, everything that has already been completed to get that gap closed.
We are committed to continuing to update this council on the progress of that. Mr. Chair, council member.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chair. And just on that of the funding gap now, I will appreciate just seeing what would be like the best positive way to close that, and also the worst possible way. I mean, if we need to shut something down and shift funds. I mean, all the whole range of drastic and not so drastic alternatives that we will have to consider at some point. That would be helpful, at least to lay the groundwork of possible outcomes down the road.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and council, part of the issue we have, challenge for the council is we are very limited in what the council actions could be. State law prevents the council from using any state funds to close this gap. And so a lot of the options are options that only our local or other funding partners can bring to the table. And that's why we have to work with them to find the solution, because the council itself took the one action it could of using federal funding that it had available. But now we're sort of out of those options at the council. So we need our funding partners. We've met today with FTA. They want this project. They are a full funding partner. They want this project completed also. And so they're looking for ways too, but their options are limited. We continue to work with our other, Hennepin County is our local funding partner to find those solutions. But
Thank you.
Any other questions? Abdi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So can you just quantify how much minimal you need by the end of the year to just keep the project going?
we identify approximately through 2023 at a roughly $275 million of that $450 to $550 million target that we said to complete the end of it. 2023 is an important year. There's a lot of assumptions built into that range of numbers that are tied to construction activity. That tunnel and building that tunnel has a lot of risk left. By the end of 2023, we will have a lot more knowledge about our assumptions, if they came true or not, if that number is going down. So we definitely we'll be asking, we need more authorization in December from this council to amend contracts for 2023. And so that's the sort of the horizon we're looking at, is what do we need to do to get through 2023, which is around $275 million of that range, of that bigger range to complete the project.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Other questions? Well, thanks, Nick, Jim, Ashanti. And we may want to have more reports, particularly on funding progress before the next quarter. With that, I had no other reports for myself. Chair Barber, do you have anything?
I do have one, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Actually, I really do. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware that there's a fun event at Metro Transit this weekend. It is the Bus Rodeo. So it is on Saturday from 9:30 to 2:30. There's free food, family fun, friendly competition, and opportunities to apply to be a bus operator. I also, unfortunately, will not be able to attend, but I'm really looking forward to seeing pictures of some of you driving a bus. So I would like to see that. This is the challenge I'm giving you.
Will there be opportunities to drive a bus?
I don't know. We'll find out. We'll see if Wes is shaking his head or not.
I have driven a bus backwards through orange cones. I'm not saying how many I hit, but I have gone. Any other reports from any council members? No? How about Mary, Regional Administrator?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just kind of an update on where we are with our staffing situation here at the council. You know, you've heard a lot about our bus operator shortage, and if you were in the Transportation Committee, we talked a lot about that at the last meeting and some of the things that we're trying to do to resolve that. But you've also heard we've got a police officer shortage, and we're having trouble hiring CSOs, and part of our implementation of our transit safety plan really depends on that hiring as well. You know, we're looking at a lot of different ways to attack those, including opening up contracts, as we talked about with the operators. But across the council, we have 147 open staffing requisitions that we're in the process of filling. I heard Lisa Barajas call it the Great Migration, where our staff are kind of shifting between different organizations, or in the case of drivers, between different driving opportunities. Police officers we see going kind of from the urban out to the suburbs. So we see this migration that's happening, and that's going to take place for I think we're going to be in this for quite some time. If you've seen the economic reports, there's twice as many jobs available as there are people seeking positions out there. In the management committee, we talked about our IT positions, and we're down 30 positions in our IT. That's about 25% of our IT department. In that case, we've got recruiters coming in cold calling our employees and pulling them away from us. And again, it's kind of just migrating between the different agencies. So there's a lot of different things that we're doing. We're doing some staff augmentation in our IT area that's giving us an opportunity to work with a lot of MCUB vendors. And I think what Craig told me was 90% of our staff augmentation is from MCUB vendors. So that's a nice opportunity to create those relationships. But it's something that I don't know that we can buy ourselves out of in the short term. It's something that we're facing with a number of other public entities in particular, and we're trying different things like IT recruiters. We're doing a police recruiter for our chief. HR is hiring a recruiter just specifically for IT. We're doing some of the same things on the transportation side. So we're really focused on kind of some different ways of going about this. We could definitely use the help of all of you in kind of pushing out our openings using LinkedIn and other formats for really advertising, you know, the great place that this is to work. So just kind of giving you a heads up that we're experiencing the same thing that others are experiencing, and it's going to be a rough haul for a while.
Thanks for the heads up. Our General Counsel, Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No report.
No report. All right. Any other business? Well, thank you all. Again, thank you, Councilmember Barber, for chairing the meeting. And there's still some time left. It's very nice outside. This meeting is adjourned.